Hello, hello, hello. Happy speaking. It's Marianna Swallow, the Speak Easy coach here, and welcome to our new feature, Speech of the Fortnight, because I can't do this every week. What I'll do in this segment is I will take a speech that caught my ears and eyes during the week, and I will break it down for you. Not every little bit, but I want to talk about what the speaker did really well, or maybe not so well. I'll find some stinkers of speeches and some really great speeches, but I want to kick off this year and this series with the speech that everyone was talking about last week. And no, it's not something from the Emmys or the Golden Globes, but Mark Carney's speech at Davos. After he gave this speech, he was crowned the darling of Davos, and we're going to see why. So allow me to share my screen, and then I will share my thoughts. All right, here we go.
Thank you very much, Larry. I'm going to start in French, and then I'll switch back to English. Merci, Larry.
One thing I really love about what he's doing here is that he is connecting with both audiences. I love that he's starting in French, and then he's going to switch to English. When you can speak in a different language, you are connecting with more people, and you are letting them know, I care, and I'm interested. I might be a little biased here because I also speak French, but I really love that he did this because he made an effort to connect with everyone or most of the people in the room.
Thank you, Larry. It is both a pleasure and a duty to be with you tonight in this pivotal moment that Canada and the world are going through. Today I will talk about a rupture in the world order, the end of a pleasant fiction and the beginning of a harsh reality.
Okay, I want to point out a couple words there. Carney chose his words really carefully. He said, I want to talk about a rupture and a fiction that is ending. And I'm hinging on these because they're not just powerful, but these were the words that people were talking about. So when you're preparing your speeches, I invite you to think about what word is going to really land with my audience, what word will have impact. One of my annoyances about corporate America, I guess I would say, is that we aren't given time to practice and actually work on our stuff. And the way most people prepare their presentations is they either just sit down with a Microsoft Word document or they open PowerPoint and they just kind of blah, 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 bang it out. That's the first draft. You really need to think more thoughtfully and prepare for your audience. But let's see what else Carney does here.
Where geopolitics, where the large main power geopolitics is submitted to no limits, no constraints. On the other hand, I would like to tell you that the other countries, especially intermediate powers like Canada, are not powerless. They have the capacity to build a new order that encompasses our values, such as respect for human rights, sustainable development, solidarity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of the various states. The power of the less power starts with honesty.
It seems that every day we're...
Okay, so he's switching back to English now. Cool. I want to also point out what that whole bit in French was a complete summary of what he's about to say. And I invite you to get inspired by this because I often get asked, well, what if there are different levels in the room? Or, you know, what if one person is more high level, like a CEO, and then I've got individual contributors. Something like this is really great. I often recommend giving kind of like the big highlights first and then letting people ask questions later. So I just want you to notice what he does here, but I like that he kind of summed it up in French for the French speakers and listeners in the room, and now we're getting into his full speech, which I'm sure was translated either during or afterwards, but let's see what he has to say. This was a very powerful speech. And by the way, this is about less than 15 minutes, so this isn't going to take too long.
Reminded that we live in an era of great power rivalry, that the rules-based order is fading, that the strong can do what they can and the weak must suffer what they must. And this aphorism of Thucydides is presented as inevitable, as the natural logic of international relations reasserting itself. And faced with this logic, there is a strong tendency for countries to go along to get along, to accommodate, to avoid trouble, to hope that compliance will buy safety. Well, it won't. So what are our options? In 1978, the Czech dissident Václav Havel, later president, wrote an essay called The Power of the Powerless. And in it, he asked a simple question: how did the communist system sustain itself?
I just want to point out what he did there and what I like. So he is pulling from a source, but also naming that source. This is one of my frustrations when I see presentations, is people will just kind of do a data dump and they won't say where the data came from. But I really like that he's invoking Václav Havel. Maybe I have a bias there too, because one of my favorite authors wrote about Havel a lot. But also Havel was a pretty influential leader. And I think if you're going to talk about something with this much impact, it's really good to pull information from a source that had impact.
And his answer began with a greengrocer. Every morning, this shopkeeper places a sign in his window: "Workers of the world unite." He doesn't believe it. No one does. But he places the sign anyway to avoid trouble, to signal compliance, to get along. And because every shopkeeper on every street does the same, the system persists. Not through violence alone, but through the participation of ordinary people in rituals they privately know to be false.
This is kind of you can see he's making an analogy, and I really like what he's doing. He's taking a story and drawing a parallel to what's going on right now in the world. And as he's saying this, the aphorism that comes up for me is I'm going to be butchering this, so forgive me, it's not right in front of me. Evil persists not because bad people do things, but because good people do nothing. And this is what he's illustrating here. But he's also using it to draw a parallel to the situation he's talking about right now.
Havel called this living within a lie. The system's power comes not from its truth, but from everyone's willingness to perform as if it were true.
Yep.
And its fragility comes from the same source. When even one person stops performing, when the greengrocer removes his sign, the illusion begins to crack. Friends, it is time for companies and countries to take their signs down.
See what he did there? That's a call to not be complicit and go along with the old world order. Subtle, but also not subtle. Also, I want to point out something else here. Notice his demeanor. When I work with people who are more introverted or calm and quiet, they often think they can't be commanding. Or they say, well, I can't be like someone like, Oprah or like a Tony Robbins. And the thing is, you don't have to be. Look at how calm and commanding our Carney is.
4 decades. For decades, countries like Canada prospered under what we called the rules-based international order. We joined its institutions, we praised its principles, we benefited from its predictability. And because of that, we could pursue values-based foreign policies under its protection. We knew the story of the international rules-based order was partially false, that the strongest would exempt themselves when convenient, that trade rules were enforced asymmetrically. And we knew that international law applied with varying rigor depending on the identity of the accused or the victim. This fiction was useful. And American hegemony in particular helped provide public goods, open sea lanes, a stable financial system, collective security, and support for frameworks for resolving disputes. So we placed the sign in the window. We participated in the rituals.
See what he's doing? How he's, in literature we call this a leitmotif. He's touching back to the reference he made. There is nothing wrong with a callback. In fact, I encourage you to find ways to reference things you've said earlier or bring things full circle. It will catch your audience's ear, but also adult listeners need repetition for things to stick. Think about all those stupid commercials you hear that you can't get out of your head. Please, Mark Carney, continue.
And we largely avoided calling out the gaps between rhetoric and reality. This bargain no longer works. Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past
See the thing again about the rupture? Call back.
2 decades, a series of crises in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination.
I just want you to let that sink in for a minute. When integration becomes the source of your subordination. He's telling everyone in the room, guess what? You're hurting yourselves by going along with this. Parallel to the grocery store, green grocer story. But I also like how he has such a calm cadence. And there are also pauses. Don't be afraid to pause in your speeches. It lets the audience get the thought, but it also allows the thought to sink in.
The multilateral institutions on which the middle powers have relied, the WTO, the UN, the COP, the architecture, the very architecture of collective problem solving are under threat. And as a result, many countries are drawing the same conclusions, that they must develop greater strategic autonomy in energy, food, critical minerals, in finance and supply chains. And this impulse is understandable. A country that can't feed itself, fuel itself, or defend itself has few options. When the rules no longer protect you, you must protect yourself. But let's be clear-eyed about where this leads. A world of fortresses will be poorer, more fragile, and less sustainable. And there's another truth.
I want to point out that line too. He's looking down the road. This is another really powerful tool. Give your audience a vision of not just here's what's happening now or here's what I have to say, but where's this going? What are the consequences?
If great powers abandon even the pretense of rules and values for the unhindered pursuit of their power and interests, the gains from transactionalism will become harder to replicate. Hegemons cannot continually monetize their relationships.
I'm going to argue he's using a $2 word with hegemons. If you don't know what it is, go look it up. By the way, Merriam-Webster.com, do not use dictionary.com. Dictionary.com sucks and it's inaccurate.
Allies will diversify to hedge against uncertainty. They'll buy insurance, increase options in order to rebuild sovereignty. Sovereignty that was once grounded in rules but will increasingly be anchored in the ability to withstand pressure. This room knows this is classic risk management. Risk management comes at a price. But that cost of strategic autonomy, of sovereignty, can also be shared. Collective investments in resilience are cheaper than everyone building their own fortresses. Shared standards reduce fragmentations. Complementarities are positive sum. And the question for middle powers like Canada is not whether to adapt to the new reality. We must. The question is whether we adapt by simply building higher walls or whether we can do something more ambitious. Now, Canada was amongst the first to hear the wake-up call, leading us to fundamentally shift our strategic posture. Canadians know that our old, comfortable assumptions that our geography and alliance memberships automatically conferred prosperity and security, that assumption is no longer valid. And our new approach rests on what Alexander Stubb, the President of Finland, has termed value-based realism. Or to put another way, we aim to be both principled and pragmatic. Principled in our commitment to fundamental values, sovereignty, territorial integrity, the prohibition of the use of force except when consistent with the UN Charter, and respect for human rights. And pragmatic in recognizing that progress is.
So this is kind of a linguistic thing, but I love it. He starts off by kind of framing what he's about to say, principled and pragmatic, and then he repeats those principled, says what falls under principled, pragmatic, and he's going to say what falls under that. Don't forget your high school English courses, alliteration, repetition. There's a reason why we were taught that stuff, and guess what? This stuff catches your audience's ear.
Often incremental, that interests diverge, that not every partner will share all of our values. So we're engaging broadly, strategically, with open eyes. We actively take on the world as it is, not wait around for a world we wish to be. We are calibrating our relationships so their depth reflects our values. And we're prioritizing broad engagement to maximize our influence, given the fluidity of the world at the moment, the risks that this poses, and the stakes for what comes next. And we are no longer just relying on the strength of our values, but also the value of our strength. We are building that strength at home. Since my government took office, we have cut taxes on incomes, on capital gains, and business investment. We have removed all federal barriers to interprovincial trade. We are fast-tracking $1 trillion of investments in energy, AI, critical minerals, new trade corridors, and beyond. We're doubling our defense spending by the end of this decade, and we're doing so in ways that build our domestic industries. And we are rapidly diversifying abroad. We've agreed a comprehensive strategic partnership with the EU, including joining SAFE, the European Defence Procurement Arrangements. We have signed 12 other trade and security deals on 4 continents in 6 months. The past few days, we've concluded new strategic partnerships with China and Qatar. We're negotiating free trade pacts with India, ASEAN, Thailand, Philippines, and Mercosur. We're doing something else.
The way he's listing his accomplishments, go ahead and rip this off, not necessarily for a speech. I mean, yes, if it pertains, but as I'm listening to this, I'm like, this is annual performance review stuff. So, we got to remember to remind our bosses and remind our audiences, hey, this is what I do well.
To help solve global problems, we're pursuing variable geometry. In other words, different coalitions for different issues based on common values and interests. So on Ukraine, we're a core member of the Coalition of the Willing and one of the largest per capita contributors to its defense and security. On Arctic sovereignty, we stand firmly with Greenland and Denmark and fully support their unique right to determine Greenland's future.
When the audience interrupts you with applause, stop talking. Most people don't. And I don't just mean people doing business presentations. When I see storytellers or comedians, they'll just keep going. If you get a reaction from the audience, pause, let them finish it, and then pick it up.
Our commitment to NATO's Article 5 is unwavering. So we're working with our NATO allies, including the Nordic-Baltic Gate, to further secure the alliance's northern and western flanks, including through Canada's unprecedented investments in over-the-horizon radar, in submarines, in aircraft, and boots on the ground, boots on the ice.
A little bit of humor there because he's from Canada. Most of Canada is frozen right now. So I don't know if the laughs weren't audible or if he just didn't get any, but it's always okay to throw humor in there. Jokes, not necessarily, but humor, yes.
Canada strongly opposes tariffs over Greenland and calls for focused talks to achieve our shared objectives of security and prosperity in the Arctic. On plurilateral trade, we're championing efforts to build a bridge between the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the European Union, which would create a new trading bloc of 1.5 billion people. On critical minerals, we're forming buyers' clubs anchored in the G7 so that the world can diversify away from concentrated supply. And on AI, we're cooperating with like-minded democracies to ensure that we won't ultimately be forced to choose between hegemons and hyperscalers. This is not naive multilateralism, nor is it relying on their institutions. It's building coalitions that work, issues by issue, with partners who share enough common ground to act together. In some cases, This will be the vast majority of nations. What it's doing is creating a dense web of connections across trade, investment, culture, on which we can draw for future challenges and opportunities. Argue the middle powers must act together because if we're not at the table, we're on the menu. But I'd also say that great powers can afford for now to go it alone. They have the market size, the military capacity, and the leverage to dictate terms. Middle powers do not. But when we only negotiate bilaterally with a hegemon, we negotiate from weakness. We accept what's offered. We compete with each other to be the most accommodating. This is not sovereignty. It's the performance of sovereignty while accepting subordination. In a world of great power rivalry, the countries in between have a choice: compete with each other for favor, or to combine to create a third path with impact. We shouldn't allow the rise of hard power to blind us to the fact that the power of legitimacy, integrity, and rules will remain strong if we choose to wield them together. Which brings me back to Havel. What does it mean for middle powers to live the truth? Well, first, it means naming reality. Stop invoking rules-based international order as though it still functions as advertised. Call it what it is: a system of intensifying great power rivalry where the most powerful pursue their interests using economic integration as coercion.
So I do like, you've heard me say already what I like about this. The one thing, especially in this part of the speech, that kind of, if I could have been Mark Carney's coach, his passion is not showing through. Right before he got to this list he's making here, he said something really important about how if they keep following the international world order, it is going to be to these countries' detriment. And his delivery, while I like it and he's still very commanding, it's very static. And he's talking about some pretty important stuff here. So I want to see a little bit of the fire. And maybe Mark Carney isn't a very fire guy. I don't know. It's hard to believe. He's had a pretty interesting career path, but you know, he's talking about some important stuff that's going to have huge impact. So let us hear that in your voice.
It means acting consistently, applying the same standards to allies and rivals. When middle powers criticize economic intimidation from one direction but stay silent when it comes from another, we are keeping the sign in the window.
Back to the analogy.
It means building what we claim to believe in. Rather than waiting for the old order to be restored, it means creating institutions and agreements that function as described. And it means reducing the leverage that enables coercion. That's building a strong domestic economy. It should be every government's immediate priority. And diversification internationally is not just economic prudence. It's a material foundation for honest foreign policy, because countries earn the right to principled stands by reducing their vulnerability to retaliation. So Canada.
See, again, he just said something really important and to me really impactful there. And it sounded to me kind of like, well, if you're going to the grocery store, can you pick me up some eggs? You know, I want to hear the fire.
Canada has what the world wants. We are an energy superpower. We hold vast reserves of critical minerals. We have the most educated population in the world. Our pension funds are amongst the world's largest and most sophisticated investors. In other words, we have capital, talent. We also have a government with immense fiscal capacity to act decisively. And we have the values to which many others aspire. Canada is a pluralistic society that works. Our public square is loud, diverse, and free.
Saying his bona fides, saying Canada's bona fides, I love it.
Canadians remain committed to sustainability. We are a stable and reliable partner in a world that is anything but. A partner that builds and values relationships for the long term. And we have something else. We have a recognition of what's happening and a determination to act accordingly. We understand that this rupture calls for more than adaptation. It calls for honesty about the world as it is. We are taking the sign out of the window. We know the old order is not coming back.
Repetition.
We shouldn't mourn it. Nostalgia is not a strategy, but we believe.
I love that. Nostalgia is not a strategy. Tell your audience what doesn't work.
That from the fracture, we can build something bigger, better, stronger, more just.
Fracture.
This is the task of the middle powers. The countries that have the most to lose from a world of fortresses and a most to gain from genuine cooperation. The powerful have their power, but we have something too. The capacity to stop pretending, to name reality, to build our strength at home, and to act together. That is Canada's path. We choose it openly and confidently, and it is a path wide open to any country willing to take it with us. Thank you very much.
All right, and he thanked his audience, which I always love. All right, this has been Speech of the Fortnight. Hope you learned some tips. Hope you're going to work these into your own speeches. Happy speaking.